Swamps inspire fear in many minds. Dark and damp, they are full of mystery and creatures that slither in the mud. An experienced guide entered Louisiana's Honey Island swamp one fall day in 1973. The outing would become the stuff nightmares are made of. Normally, the trek held few terrors for the guide. Even the lethal alligator was rarely a problem for an experienced outdoorsman. The guide would discover something else lurking in these quiet waters, something that struck his boat. There is a land of endless winter where the air is thin and clean, with peaks soaring 5 miles high to form the icy roof of the world. The Himalayas. The nomad Sherpas who tend their flocks on harsh alpine meadows believe they are not alone in the wilderness. They know the mountains are gods, and that the gods have spawned good and evil spirits who keep watch from the highest crags. The most frightening of these spirits is the man-beast the Sherpa call Yeti. Western men call him the abominable snowman. Abominable because legend says he kills those foolish enough to enter his frozen world. Sir Edmund Hillary had heard of the abominable snowman, but along with Sherpa Tenzing Norgay, he challenged the elements and the unknown to scale Mount Everest in 1953. Hillary would bravely return years later to search for the monster, but would find nothing. Other places in the world have secrets to tell, and there are other men fascinated by mystery. One such place is America's Pacific Northwest. One such man is Peter Byrne. Like the Himalayas, this is a high and lonely land, as yet unvanquished by the steady surge of humanity called progress. Byrne once hunted game in the foothills of the Himalayas, where he became fascinated with accounts of the Yeti. Now he roams the Northwest, substituting camera for gun, in search of another man-like beast, Bigfoot. Men of strong character have challenged this wilderness before. In 1924, a group of rugged miners staked a claim near Mount St. Helens in Washington state. They reported that early one morning, they were attacked by giant rock-throwing beasts. The battle lasted hours. The miners thought they had killed one of the creatures, but no trace was ever found. Bigfoot and the abominable snowman have much in common. Perhaps Bigfoot migrated here across the ancient land bridge that once joined Asia with North America. A world away from the mountains is the urbane and colorful city of New Orleans. Yet less than 40 miles from the Superdome, concrete and steel give way again to wilderness. Called Honey Island Swamp, 27,000 acres of sluggish streams, still ponds, and dense subtropical forest make up another of the world's great remaining primitive areas. Life on the edge of this vast Mississippi Delta bayou seems prosaic enough, with comfortable old homes punctuating lush farmland. In the little towns and farmhouses, however, stories are exchanged about a creature said to lurk deep within the swamp. Few outsiders ever hear them, perhaps for good reason. Ted Williams farms a small plot of land near Honey Island. He also traps muskrat and mink. One day, it appeared he'd been trapped himself.
The first time I ever saw it was standing plumb still like a stump. Went on a trap line, and I stopped after I realized it wasn't a stump. I knew it wasn't supposed to be there. And it run. When I stopped, it run. And it was a dark gray, about 7 foot high. And it jumped a bow. That's the first sighting I ever saw. The next time I seen them was they swimming the river, 2 of them. And one of them was bigger than the other, and one of them was faster than the other, and they swim just like a human. Them long overhand strokes. I tried to get one of them to look at me, and the other one run off, got out of the way, and the other one never would look at me. And I could have shot it, but I wouldn't do it on account it wouldn't look at me. It looked too much like a human to me. Broad shoulders, with arms hang down below its knees. Hands looked almost like a human. Well, I don't like to talk about it because people don't believe what you say, what you've seen. And I don't like to be called a liar. Nobody does.
There are those who scoff at Ted Williams and say his story is beyond belief, beyond comprehension. The swamp is undeniably vast, however, and still largely unexplored. It could hide an incredible secret for a very long time. Ted Williams is not the only one to confess seeing something frightening in the swamp. While some still prefer to keep quiet, others have begun a systematic search for the creature.
At this time, we're well within the interior of Honey Island Swamp, and you can tell by surroundings here it's a pretty desolate area. This is one of the main spots here that we're at now. When we came through going to the camp and we first encountered this creature was in this very area right here.
Harlan Ford is a retired air traffic controller who has lived near the swamp for 20 years.
Going to the camp, pitching through this ravine right here is where we found where it had been leading off of this ridge, coming right through this little ravine bottom on this wet ground. And this is where we first found its tracks, and it was watered about 50 yards over at this creek over here. And at no time did we find any tracks where it had gone in the water. But once it would get to this water's edge, just as a bear would do or something, then I guess it would let down to drink. And that's when we would find the heavy clawed front feet of this creature. One evening late, just about dusk dark, a friend of mine, we encountered eyes. They were yellow or amberish colored, real wide apart. So this friend of mine, Jim Hartzog, he took a gun and went into this area and to try to kill whatever it was. And he says that he came face to face with this thing. It looked something like about 7 foot tall. And he fired on it with using a headlight. He said when he did, the eyes went out. Probably what happened, it turned and ran, and he shot at it one more time. And but we went back the next day and checked for sign and blood, but we didn't find any. So we figured Jim missed it that night. The last sign that we've had, or anybody has had, of this creature, and this is within the last 4 months, was on the sandbar where the thing crossed the river, crossed the sandbar, and left footprints on it. That was found by a member of the Louisiana Wildlife and Fish Commission. And that's been the very last contact we've had with it in this area.
Men are hunting the creature with guns. It seems unlikely the next encounter will be a peaceful one. If finally cornered, what will the creature do? Honey Island Swamp has been largely ignored by men and seemingly forgotten by time. Monster hunter Harlan Ford is among those who believe a prehistoric relative of man may have been isolated here ages ago, developing in its own way, unmolested by the winds of evolutionary change. Ford is pressing his search deeper into the swamp. He's walking where a few men before him have gone. Traditional scientists have largely ignored the reports of monster sightings. Ford hopes to come up with evidence that will change their minds. A track, obviously fresh. It resembles nothing that is known to inhabit the swamp. Clearly, the track was not made by a man. Ford believes he must move deeper still into the swamp.